When it comes to choosing a major in college, there are a myriad of options. So, some people might choose a major that resonates with them. Others might choose something that will increase the odds of getting a job that will in turn support them well. And for those who are lucky, whatever they choose is a combination of the two. That's not to say there aren't those who choose something because they didn't know what else to choose. And in my case, I saw myself living paycheck to paycheck. I chose music. And while I do come from an immigrant family, it was actually my parents, siblings, high school music teacher, of course. It was these people that pushed me to pursue a music degree. All that being said, I didn't know what to expect, and there was a definite learning curve with suddenly joining a program where musicians had been brought up with private lessons, summer music camps, and so on. But I loved it. If you're on the cusp of pursuing an undergraduate degree and are curious about music studies, here are some of the definitive perks I can attest to. But before we get into actual details, this video is more or less the antithesis of another video I put out, which was Music School Ruins My Mental Health. There's always going to be optimistic and pessimistic ways of looking at life-changing events, and since music is hard, getting a degree in music is hard, I do consider it a life-changing event. That being said, if you want to check it out, go ahead. But the focus on this video, of course, is the actual perks of studying music. Let's get started. Number one would be self-esteem. Self-esteem, not so much in I'm confident in who I am, but more so I'm confident in what I can do. As far as being more comfortable with knowing what you are capable of, music has a wonderful way of doing that because you have to devote so much to it. And when you're spending your 4 hours of daily practice on your instruments, it eventually adds up and you can see the benefits from it. You can see your improvement, your growth, to a point where you can start just playing professionally. Of course, there are still auditions and all these other things that need to be accounted for when you're trying to get a gig, but to have the skill and to know how to obtain that skill and refine it is a major boost when it comes to self-esteem. Number two is just discipline. And discipline obviously kind of came into play with my previous point, and it's honestly going to touch on a lot of these later points as well. But when you are studying music, there is discipline involved, and the reason is you can't really bullshit your way through music school. You can't bullshit your way through a music lesson. Your instructor is going to know you didn't spend enough time on that, or you didn't spend time on that at all. Discipline definitely gets refined with music because there's a lot of joy that comes out of seeing the fruits of your labor come into play. It was also really nice with music school being surrounded by those like-minded individuals who also wanted to sound good, who also had some degree of perfectionism, for better or for worse. It was really neat just being surrounded by that because that means the quality of the sounds we were producing when we were in ensembles was just that much better. Number three is socialization, and this is kind of like a double-edged thing because again, with that whole discipline thing, you're spending a lot of hours locked up in a room with an instrument by yourself. Yes, you'll have rehearsals, and yes, maybe you'll hang out with someone to study a piece together, but ultimately it's up to you and yourself and being alone. So, of course, you gotta learn how to enjoy your own company if you don't already. But on the other side of the spectrum, when you are in rehearsals and when you are dealing with performance days, especially as a percussionist where you are the first to show up and the last to leave because you need to move instruments around, there's a lot of socialization that happens, and it's kind of just embedded into your classes and your ensembles. I feel like I really didn't have to work hard to make close friends in my program because we were always together. So like, it's the convenience, the circumstance of just being around each other. But I definitely saw that as a positive thing because it's very different from what I saw with other individuals in other undergraduate degrees where they go to their biology class, their geography, English, whatever, but they're not really in a specific community. Whereas with music, it was just, 600 people roughly in that program, and depending on your instrument and your major, you had your crowd, and they were there to help you. They were there to call you out when you weren't performing to a certain degree. They were also there to just give you advice and borrow textbooks from that one class they took last semester. I do miss that. Having gone into the workforce after studying music, it's just very different having to go back to suddenly more or less just kind of being on your own. So number 4 is self-awareness, and it does tie back to everything I previously mentioned. The way I see it with music, I learned how to learn something. And what I mean by that is coming out of this degree, I know I have the capacity to really master something that I set my mind to. It's very useful to have discipline for that, but also self-awareness in knowing how you learn, in knowing what tactics actually work for you and aren't a waste of time, and also just knowing how to build on what you are really struggling with. So especially as a young musician, it's very tempting to just play the pieces and sections of a piece that are super fun to you. The reason they're fun to you is because they're easy for you, because they're second nature. What I learned with school, and specifically with my practice sessions, was you need to learn to love the sections that you hate, because only then are you actually improving and pushing yourself into a different area. How great is it to be able to not only enjoy a section of a piece or one single piece of repertoire out of a book, but instead be familiar with the entire piece or the entire book. Suddenly you have a lot more to play with and a lot more to enjoy, and then you can learn even harder things. So there's a certain sense of self-awareness that came through these semesters of these private lessons, this time alone. Likewise, there is a certain expectation that's held within this program, or that was held in my music program, where if you show up to something unprepared, such as a rehearsal, where suddenly now it's not just about yourself, but it's affecting everyone there, they are only going to sound as bad as you do. You are only as strong as your weakest player. That's another way of phrasing that. So again, music definitely contributed to a newer, stronger sense of self-awareness, as well as realizing your impact on others. I feel like that's beyond valuable, especially going from college into workplace. Not everyone has that skill. Not everyone is as mindful of how they are impacting everyone else there, and that's unfortunate. But moving on to point number 5. All right, so number 5, this one's actually stage fright, and this one's great. When you perform a certain amount of times as a music student, chances are you're involved in multiple ensembles. Maybe you're doing someone a favor and playing their piece that they wrote for their composition recital. Maybe your music teacher, your instructor, has an extra part they need filled. Hey, join me for this performance. You're getting a lot of practice just showing up prepared for a performance. And naturally, over time, my ability to perform without being nervous just kind of started to happen. And obviously I haven't performed a lot now. It's been 3 years since I graduated, but I still have the skills to turn on something when I need to and just perform. So that could either be an interview, it could be talking into a camera like I am right now, or it could be just doing something that is generally nerve-wracking. Ultimately, it's a matter of knowing how to relax, like the actual physiology of relaxing, focusing your mind, your breath, and just doing the thing. So for that reason, I like to say music school taught me to just not have stage fright. This brings me to point number 6, which is public speaking. And public speaking can be scary for people. Personally, growing up, I enjoyed it because a lot of the times when I was, nerdy kid in school, it meant this is your moment to show up and demonstrate everything that you know and prove that you know certain things. So that was always kind of fun for me. It felt very much like a game. But I would compare it a lot to performing in that it is helpful, obviously, to show up prepared, but ultimately it's all about your composure and showing up in a way that is, one, demanding attention, not demanding attention like look at me, but you show up with a commanding presence. That's what I mean. If anything, it would be a disservice to all the work I did in my undergraduate degree if I were to go and do whatever job in the future and just be this boring public speaker. At the very least, I've acquired these skills to be somewhat engaging, and there's pride in that. Public speaking, though. Music definitely helps with public speaking. That being said, keep in mind I'm a musician. I'm not even a vocal musician. I love singing, but I wasn't trained for that. But I think it's across the board, regardless of what instrument you play. brings me to the very last point, which is the art of performing. And it's kind of what sums up what my experience with the music. It's one, knowing how to do all the work when you're preparing for it. It's knowing how to collaborate well with the people you're doing a job with. And it's also, of course, performing to the best of your ability, being professional, being engaging, knowing how to adapt quickly when things are going wrong. Especially as a percussionist, oftentimes they don't hire enough people to fulfill the parts that are needed, so you're playing 2 or 3 different parts at once. And I don't mean 2 or 3 different instruments, I mean each page has a specific amount of instruments, and for some reason you now need to combine those parts into a single document. Sometimes you have mallets or sticks that you use to hit like bells with on one hand, and then a little metal beater for a triangle part, and maybe you're playing tambourine with this hands, or bass drum, or there's a snare part. Whatever it may be, obviously those are parts you really have to choreograph and prepare for, but also you just need to stay very creative and able to adapt. So I think that's, I guess, in retrospect, all these points really do combine and add up to one thing, but music taught me the art of performing and the art of being able to take this insane level of discipline into a whole other point of your life, or into every other point of your life. So for that, I'm super grateful, and with that alone, I definitely recommend it. Of course, I haven't even mentioned that aside from music school, of course, I had my general education requirements, part-time job. I was trying to stay somewhat active and in shape. But it was definitely tough, and it's not an easy degree. At least within my program, there was a sort of hierarchy in terms of the level of caliber you need to have in your instrument. If you're doing performance as your main thing, expect to be really good at your instrument, which is always nice because I can go back to playing piano and suddenly remember, oh yeah, I know how to read treble clef and bass clef at the same time, even though this isn't even my instrument. It's a nice little neurological skill to have. But expect to do well with your instrument. If you're doing anything like education, composition, those other degrees I mentioned, it can be a little bit more lax, but you still want to have a good understanding, especially in education. If you do have students, let's say you're teaching at high school and they've outperformed their middle school music teacher, you want to be able to offer resources to them so that they can keep learning, teaching themselves, or if you have the capacity for you to actually show them yourself. So it's good to be well-rounded with your instrument. It's definitely good to take advantage of everything that comes with the music program, with the friends, with the gig opportunities, and especially if you happen to be studying in LA. And I'm sure this is true for like other orchestras around the country, but in LA specifically, if you wanted to listen to the LA Philharmonic, you could, as a student. You just show up 2 hours before performance. I forgot exactly what the name of the program is, but as long as you have your student ID, you can buy really expensive seats for 12, 15, 16 bucks, whatever it may be. The idea is they just want to fill up those front row seats, those expensive seats. If someone is traveling to LA to perform here from Russia or London or wherever in the world, it just looks better to have an actual reception there amongst the audience. So there's that, there's the perks. And I think lastly, if you study music, biggest thing or advice I can offer is just take care of your body, especially as a percussionist and me being 5'1". If I wasn't working out regularly, suddenly it was a lot harder to set up my very heavy instruments, walk them out of the storage room. We had a tam-tam that was easily, I don't know, maybe 3 feet diameter. It was gigantic and it was heavy on a giant like metal stand. There were definitely a lot of bruises that came with being a percussionist, but aside from that, any instrument really, take care of your body. What you're doing is repetitive motion, and with that, it's just really easy to get injured, like the tendonitis I got on both elbows. But also, if you're not sleeping, those 4 hours of practice aren't really going to be as effective because suddenly your brain's not rested, your body's not rested. Have you really retained any of what you put in that day previous? And yeah, you need energy, but take care of your body, take advantage of these student perks, and of course, enjoy it because it's a very rare opportunity to be able to play with other great, amazing musicians without it having to be your livelihood. And it's just a lot of fun. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and of course, thank you for watching, and go enjoy your life.